Namaskaram. We are happy to welcome Dr. Dinker at Isha Institute for the launch of his new book, Mechanical Function of the Atrial Diastole, a New Discovery. Dr. Dinker Rai was the chairman of the Department of Surgery at Interfaith Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York. He was also the chairman of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan and visiting professor of Rajiv Gandhi University in Bangalore, India. An internationally reputed vascular surgeon, he has pioneered the movement in venous surgery in this country. There are many surgical procedures, innovations, inventions, patents, and catheters in his name. But the pivotal life work of his consists of a new discovery on the mechanical function of the heart, exactly 400 years after Sir William Harvey discovered the pumping of the heart, known as the ventricular systolic function. We would like to thank Dr. Dinker for being with us today. We will leave it to Dr. Dinker to take us through his discovery and explain this in a way we can understand.
Okay.
Now we invite you, Dr. Dinker, to present your books to Sadhguru.
This. Okay. Open, yes.
Okay.
This one is, let me see, Sadhguru, let me say, written Sadhguru. That's yours with my pranams. This one, I want you to sign it for me. You can hold the book like that. Hold it.
It's yours. Thank you very much. I will sign that.
Yeah, keep it there. We'll keep it there.
Please.
Oh.
Namaskaram, Dinker, sir. So, Dr. Dinker Rai, coming from the state of Karnataka, from the coastal region of Karnataka. And for those of you who do not know, that he was part of that very effervescent group of cricketers at one time, who people who played with him at that time, many of them are legendary names today in the world, like Prasanna, Chandrasekhar, G.R. Vishwanath, Gavaskar, they all grew up together on the cricketing field. And Dinker Rai himself has played for Karnataka, am I correct?
I was selected for the Ranji against Bombay. Because of the examination, I had to take on the same day. I had to give it up on that day.
Unlike me, to watch a football match, I did not go to the examination. So he was selected for to play for Karnataka team. Karnataka team was a formidable team at that time, and he chose to become a doctor. And so about this particular aspect of it was surprising to me that this was not known in modern medical science about the reverse pumping of the heart, which is a very important part of the yogic system, and somehow it has been left out, and it was he who brought this to the notice of the scientific community. And now I would like Dr. Dinker Rai to explain to us what this means. And also he must say, how does it help somebody who's already given away their hearts? How is it relevant to me, I must?
What is the question? What is that last question he said?
The question is,
How?
How is it relevant to me when I've given away my heart completely?
Oh. That is, you have given away the divine heart. there's a divine heart and a physical heart. This explains, this book is only about the physical heart, not the divine heart which we have, which is well explained in yoga. It's about one game below the Adam apple, there's a divine heart. That's where we get all the emotions. Actually, Indians first talked about heart. When I went through the history of medicine, I was very surprised. First of all, before I start this, let me thank Sadhguru for your generosity and kindness to release my book in this esteemed group of devotees. I am really honored, I am humbled by this experience. I presented so many times in the world, but I never felt nervous as I am today.
Your heart racing, sir?
The heart rate is very tachycardic right now.
Both sides pumping.
Both sides pumping and suctioning. So, I'm not a cardiologist, nor a physiologist. This work is basically entire physiological function of the heart that was missed. You may be wondering why it missed. I want to take you back in the history of medicine. You may understand. You may be sometimes surprised. Actually, till 16th century, we never accepted heart as organ of circulation. Organ of circulation is always liver. You may be surprised. On the basis of that, entire medicine was practiced till the 16th century. When comes a new person, a very brilliant man from England comes, his name is William Harvey. He changed the entire world. How I ended up with the heart, either it is an accident or God's blessing, I don't know what it is. As when I finished my fellowship in vascular surgery at that time means arterial surgery on the arteries, bypass operations and all that you heard of, bypass on the heart, bypass on the leg, carotid bypass, for all these things you heard. That is the surgery mainly exciting. The venous field was left out. Nobody touched the venous field. All that we know is varicose veins, and we strip and ligate and strip the veins. That's what they do even today. So I concentrated on the venous side. At the same time, 2 or 3 other people also were of the same mind across the country. So we exchanged our notes, and we formed the first Phibology Society of America in this country. And then the growth started taking place. So no sooner I started, I realized the entire culprit, cause of all the venous disease, whether it's varicose veins, spider veins, venous ulcers going on for 10, 20, 30 years on a patient's leg, everything is secondary to something known as venous valves. To make you all understand, if you put a ligation on your arm, the veins pop up. And then you can see small bulges every 5 centimeters. That bulges, there are valves. One-way door, butterfly door. It opens like this. When it opens like this, it allows the blood to go towards the heart. It doesn't allow the blood to go back. So these valves are the culprits. So I had to study these valves. When I have to study the valves, I have to invent a test. So I have to put a catheter around the groin area through the neck and manipulate the groin and shoot contrast and take pictures of the valves to see whether they're competent or not. Competent means it must allow the blood only to go up. You should not allow the blood to go back. Once it allows the blood to go back, you get varicose veins, ulcer of the leg, swelling of the leg, darkness of the leg. All these things happens. It's not a post-thrombotic syndrome actually. So when I was doing one of these procedures, early time, I'm talking about 1986. So that time, first time, we have to tilt the table. The patient should be erect like this when I contrast. So we have to tilt the X-ray table and shoot the dye. When I was doing that, the entire X-ray machine got frozen suddenly. And we were panicking because I was holding the patient so that he doesn't fall down with my resident. The entire room went dark, and my technician ran to the panel to correct the machine. And meanwhile, I was holding and breathing heavy. I could hear my own breathing. The only thing that I could see in the dark room is the lighted fluorescent screen. That because I could not freeze that. The machine was going on. So what had happened? I had already injected dye. So little of the dye got caught in these valves in the groin, and suddenly I saw these valves were moving. I was surprised. I told my resident, look, the valves are moving. I can't believe this. Not only it's moving, the interesting is it's moving rhythmically, like the heartbeat. I said, it's like a heartbeat. So this was a passing observation for me, and everything went on well. But this observation started haunting me. Every night it's like somebody waking you up and telling, look, there is something. This is passive or active. You should know that. You know what is active means? See, this motion is active. The energy comes there only. But if I have to do like this is passive, because the heart, this is moving because of this force. So I want to know whether the valves are moving by itself or secondary to something else. Because it was rhythmically opening and closing with the heartbeat, I thought it must be related to the heart. So that's where my experiment started after that. For the next 10 years, I would have done a lot of experiments in the canine model, and I'll show you a little bit of the experiments to you all. And then at the end, I got an answer. It took me 5 years to do the experiments, 10 years to understand, because you cannot explain this on the basis of the present understanding of circulation. There's no way. There are two things held me. One is known as Aristotle's anatomical description of the heart. Second, there is something known as Starling's law of muscle contraction. You all know this. Entire world thinks, even today, it happened in the medicine, but entire world thinks muscle only contracts. See, this is relaxation, this is contraction. No, this is active, this is also active. So that law has to be changed, in my mind at least. When I got out of that box, understood, both actions of the muscles are active. Because this also takes enough energy, chemical changes, electrical changes, and physiological changes. This also has electrical changes, chemical changes, and physiological changes. So both are active. So nowadays they talk about in the gym, stretch your muscle, all those things have come without understanding that stretching is the extension of the muscle. So I started timing the valves open with the EKG of the patient. It's something known as P waves and QRST waves. Sadhguru was talking about T waves today. So QRST waves are ventricular systole. P waves are atrial diastole. Surprisingly, this is coinciding with the atrial diastole. So I started experimenting on the atrium. That's how I started. I will show you first. When I saw this motion of the venous valve, I could not sleep for days. It was so exciting because the first time to observe it. I hope you will feel the same way when you see the first one. This is what is exactly I will explain to the. This is the patient is standing up. The contrast is injected to the femoral vein valves here. You will see all the valves there. You can see them opening and closing during every heartbeat. This patient had 69 heartbeats with one missed heartbeat, and you can see that. This is 1 minute video. Can we go to the video? This one.
The opening and closure of these valves occur during each cardiac cycle. This individual has 69 beats per minute. These valves open and close 69 times during each minute.
I think it's very clear now. You can see the valves opening and closing during every heartbeat. You can stop that and go back to the previous slide. Okay. I started trying to understand the past history. There is nothing explained about the motion of the valves. Only thing that is explained is the function of the valves. That also, this gentleman, Hieronymus Fabricius Aquapadente, in 1590s, 1570s, he discovered the function of the valves, as which I explained. It opens one-way door. Because this function, this discovery made him a celebrity in Europe. He was given the chairmanship of Padua University. Padua University, that time medical school means like John Hopkins today. In Europe, is the main school. He was made the chairman. Because of his celebrity status, a very bright mind from England known as William Harvey comes to study under him. So then I realized the motion of the venous valve is a new discovery on my part. I'm a little kid, as like little boy, like Sadhguru already told, coming from a village area of Karnataka and finding and telling that I found a new discovery. It was not easy for me. So then I realized it's a new discovery. Then I published this paper first time. It took me a long time to publish, 10 years to publish it. Ultimately, they published it. So it was published in International College of Angiology journal. And next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. See the history. To understand the atrial diastolic function, it is very relevant to the past history of circulation. Otherwise, my work has no meaning for you all. I have to take you to a trip 2,000 years back, 2,500 years back, to the time of Aristotle, Hippocrates, and people like that. I have been last 35 years, I am going up and down all the time in the history. It's like I can even talk to them personally. I got an insight into the history. I have brought out very nice points about the history in the book, if you all can read it. The Aristotle was a great philosopher, you know that. But he had interest in every other subject. He was not a doctor, he was a son of a physician. He used to go and dissect out dead bodies and dead animals. And first time he found the organ of heart, what he found when he cut it, 2 chambers in the heart, very muscular fibers. That is totally different than anything around it. It's like a belly, he thought it's like a belly because empty. So belly, in Latin, belly means ventricle. That's why he named it as ventricle. Even today we use that word, ventricle. Ventricle is nothing but belly in ordinary terms. So the rest of the things he saw, all the big veins coming and draining into it. It joins there and it looked like an entrance hall to him. So he did not say it is part of the heart. He said it's an entrance hall. Entrance hall means atria. That's why atria was named. It is, entrance hall means the joining of the veins and draining into the heart. So according to his anatomy, heart had only 2 chambers. Now this anatomy was taught generation after generation after generation till the time of William Harvey. So he also brought out with the idea that heart has only ventricles. That's why he concentrated only on the ventricle and he gave the function of the ventricle to us. So the atrial function is left off completely. Even after that, atrium was not part of the heart. Only recently, the anatomists decided atria is nothing to do with the veins. They are chambers. It's part of the heart. It has no function. It's still an entrance hall. So they called it the atria. And now the heart got 4 chambers. So today we accept heart as 4 chambers, but physiological function is only the ventricular systole. That's what even now, when we practice all the medicine, everything what we do, everything revolves around the ventricular function. Nothing we have discussed about atrium. Atrial diastole, we think is a passive entrance hall, passive ventricular, especially the atrial diastole cannot have any function because Starling has already told you, heart has no function, muscle has no function when it goes back to its original position. It is a passive motion. Only the contraction of the muscle has function. These 2 things caught us. This was also held me back from explaining my theories. But later, after 10 years later, somehow it dawned to me that I have to get out of this box. I jumped out of the box, then suddenly realized that atrium diastole is as active as systole. That is why I could explain this whole phenomenon. So when Aristotle described the circulation, you can see, this is my picture. This is a drawing I have drawn, explanatory diagram. The liver is the main organ of circulation, what you see. From the liver, all the veins goes up. The upper vein, the superior vena cava, supplies the brain, heart and the lungs. Lower vein goes to the tissues. And all these veins are end veins, end vessels. They do not join the arteries according to them. The blood is constantly produced in the liver and distributed. What is the heart? Heart, can you go one before that? Okay, this is the first Aristotle's era. The heart, they thought, is not an organ of circulation. It only circulates pneuma and divine spirit. That's why the whole body is warm. That's also they said when the patient is dead, it becomes cold because the heart stops also. So that is why I have not put, and the heart has no blood. The ventricle has no blood, the left ventricle. That's why you can see the ventricle and the arteries are white painted, because they literally believe there is no blood running in the arteries. It's very late we came to understand that the blood runs both in the arteries and the veins. And the veins and arteries are joined together. Next slide, please. I will not go into the details of it. This is Galenic era. Galen is this is William Harvey, who comes to study under, one slide before, can you go? Okay. The Galenic era, I want to say one word about Galen. Galen is a child prodigy born in Turkey, 180 AD. He discussed everything about the medicine. The entire medicine for next 1500 years practiced on his theories. Very, very surprising that nobody disputed his theories for 1500 years. Only when William Harvey came in, he disputed his ideas about circulation. So, next slide please. So in 1590, a brilliant British genius, I should say, that he comes to study under Aquapadente. First thing, he's obsessed with what? Venous valves, because that's what he comes to understand. It's like I am going to Sadhguru. What I am obsessed with? Inner engineering, Bhavaspandana, Samyama, all these things, I am obsessed with that, right? That's what I want to, that's what happens to me when I come to a celebrity or a great personality like this. Same thing happened to him when he went to study under Aquapadente. He was obsessed with that. So in the whole book, he wrote a book, De Mortu Cordis, there is only one diagram about the valves, nothing about the heart. So he comes to study under Aquapadente. He is the first one to understand that heart is the organ of circulation. What he studies actually, anatomy of Aristotle.
Not bad for him. How could this happen? So when somebody thought liver is the organ of circulation, how many did they kill, the doctors?
Swamiji, I'll tell you what happened exactly to him. He was about to, this is a good point he brought. He discovered it. He did not have the guts to declare it, but ultimately that's why he's the most bravest person. He ultimately declared heart is the organ of circulation. And those days there was no journal. He was called into the royal court. He was supposed to announce it there. The moment it announced is accepted. So if it is announced and accepted, next day the whole medicine has to be changed. So the entire group of doctors in London joined together, made a coup, and they decided to assassinate him on the previous night. So he comes to know that. He escapes to Paris, and he was incognito for 2 years in Paris. And during that time, he writes this book, De Mortu Cordis, because if he's killed, at least my work is there. So that time, nobody accepted him. But today, do you know that De Mortu Cordis is a book, one of the 100 most important books of Western civilization. It is considered as that important, that much of importance they are given. And he was given Sir knighthood. So he is the first one tells us that our heart is the organ of circulation. Second most important discovery, very genius is a simple test like tourniquet test. He puts a tourniquet. This all you also can do. This is the test he learned from his teacher. Put a tourniquet, just to occlude the veins. Till you can feel the radial pulses. That means you have not occluded the arteries, the tourniquet. What happens immediately? All the veins become big. It bulges, right? So he thought, come on, maybe the same blood that goes in the artery comes back in the vein. Otherwise, why should it engorge? There must be a connection. So he further did ascertain in another experiment. Now he made the tourniquet very tight so that he can't feel the pulse at all. That means no blood is going to the arm. The moment he did that, the veins collapsed. The arm became pale. So this simple experiment, look at the genius of that mind, that established arteries and the veins are connected to each other. Without a microscope, you have not seen the capillaries. Without that, he has established. That's why it was not accepted by the other doctors. But 60 years later, that guy comes a guy known as Malfinge. He discovers the capillary in the lungs. Then suddenly the entire world woke up. My God, William Harvey said this without microscope 70 years back. So they not only accepted that work, they accepted the entire theory of the heart. Then the Galen's theory went out, and William Harvey's theory started coming, and they started practicing medicine on the basis of William Harvey. That's why he's the father of modern medicine. So on the basis of his theory of circulation, only one thing what he did not tell is, he established that heart has two ventricles. When it contracts systole, it pumps the blood in the arteries. So because of the valves, the blood cannot go back, right? So he thought that because of the valves, the blood has to come back to the heart. That's his theory of circulation, William Harvey's theory of circulation. But no sooner, after 100 years, within 100 years, the physiologists came to know that ventricular systole, when it pumps the blood, is only enough, the force, that to drive the blood to the capillary area. After that, if it was only for the ventricular systolic force, the blood cannot come back. Then we are stuck. Then how the blood comes back in the veins? We have no idea. Even today we have no idea how. We hang on to very simple things, that when I'm walking, the muscle contracts, it pushes the blood. That's one thing. When I respire, the respiration increases the blood circulation. But these are all adjunctive forces. This is not the main force. If I am lying down, still the blood is moving. If I hold the respiration for a while, still the blood is moving. We have no explanation how the blood moves in the veins, even today. So next slide, please. So this is William Harvey's theory. At least he said, heart is organ of circulation. There is blood in the arteries and the veins. Artery and veins are connected to each other. It's one circuit. The same blood that goes in the arteries comes back to the heart. And it's a given amount of blood. 5 to 6 liters of blood only in the heart, body. That circulates, keep on circulating, and gives the nutrition and oxygenation to the rest of the tissues. So next slide, please. See, this is a present theory. It's the same thing we are saying. Only thing we are adding is the venous side, the blue side, the muscle contraction and respiration helps the circulation. But we don't know the main force which circulates the blood. Okay? Next slide, please. So I'm stuck with the atrium because of the EKGs. So I developed a model, canine model, and kept the canine in the erect posture and did a couple of experiments. And I'll just touch the experiment. I don't want to go into the scientific aspect of it. What is the present understanding of atrial diastole, atrial function? All the cardiologists, if there is any cardiologist here, he can tell me. It has 3 phases. It is a reservoir during ventricular systole. When the ventricle contracts, it's a reservoir. Blood comes and collects it. When the ventricle goes into diastole, it becomes a conduit. So it takes the blood to the ventricle. Atrial diastole has no function. But what happened is they started putting pacemakers to the ventricles. It improves the function of the heart. Then they experimentally put pacemaker into the atria also. Suddenly they saw there is increased cardiac output. But they could not explain how it is, because they cannot explain that atrial diastole has a function. So they have to give something explanation. They said atrial kick. They said at the end of atrial systole, when it contracts, the last few drops of blood, it pushes into the ventricle and it increases the cardiac output. So there is a small function is being given to atrial systole only, atrial kick they call it as. So this is the 3 phases of atrial function today. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What I am showing is an experiment on the heart. I have put a catheter into the right atrium of the canine heart and started counting the pressure in the erect posture of the. What you see is the atrial pressure. If you see, even in the normal heart, it is 7 by minus 2 millimeters of mercury. Diastole minus 2, systole 7 positive pressure. The negative pressure, there is already a negative pressure in the atrium during diastole. Even 1 millimeter difference of mercurial pressure. Imagine, the fluid has to flow from a higher pressure to lower pressure. That itself can keep the blood moving. So now what I did is the next experiment, I isolated the atrium. What I did is, what you see there is a ligation, that is a superior vena cava, large vein from the neck coming and joining the heart. And the large vein from the abdomen going is inferior vena cava. I ligated it, isolated the atrium partially. When I partially isolated, you can see the graphs there. Immediately the graph goes up and the negative pressure goes to minus 14 millimeters mercury. In other words, what it's telling me is, when you decrease the venous return to the atrium, it reacts to it. How it reacts? It increases the negative pressure of the atrial diastole. So, atrial diastole consciously acting to the venous return. So I wanted to do the next experiment. In the next experiment, what I did, I ligated both superior vena cava and the inferior cava. That means atrium is not getting any blood. This is nice to talk to you now, but during the experiment, after the preparation goes about 4 hours, and the experiment within no time I ligate, everything goes fadak, the blood pressure goes down to 0, and the heart almost about arrest. I have to stop this thing. That's what happened to me. I did not know what is happening. I had to stop the experiment. Then I would, the depressed mind, I would go home with all the datas, and after 1 or 2 months, I would say, let me see what happened. Then it opened my mind. See, when I ligated, first 3 curves, the atrium reacts with the blowout. It increases the pressure, maximum negative pressure, minus 24 millimeters of mercury. That means it wants to suck the blood as much as possible, but there is no blood. There is no blood, there is no cardiac output. Naturally, the blood pressure goes to 0. Well, after 3 beats, it cannot function. The heart cannot function if it's that way. So that was clear in my mind that atrial diastole reacts to venous return. Next slide, please. So now I did a nice experiment. What I did, I took a jar of water in a jar, Ringer's lactate, connected the jar of water to the heart through the inferior the 18-inch silastic tube, and then ligated both superior and vena cava. The level of jar of water and the level of the tip of the catheter must be in the same level, and dog is in this position, erect.
Whose dog was it, sir?
This is luckily for me, there was a dog lab in my hospital, and I was in charge of the dog lab. So I was allowed to, somehow my chief had tremendous, somehow he is a Jewish chairman, he had tremendous faith in my work. He was encouraging me to do this work against all odds, I should say. And that's why I was able to do these experiments. As a private physician I was doing. I was not coming from any big university center like John Hopkins, or this is done at the most underserved area of the country, Stuyvesant area in Brooklyn. There's no more underserved than that area. Even the ghettos of Bronx or Chicago is no comparison. So from that point of view, it's a unique work coming from that area also. It will be known for that. So when I ligate, what happened now? Atrium produces negative pressure, and Ringer's lactate started flowing from the jar to the atrium. So the heart doesn't have to stop functioning because it is getting some return in the form of, it cannot sense whether it's blood or water. So it started working. So started continuous. The pressure, negative pressure is about 20 millimole, 17 I think. So this established for clearly in my mind, atrial diastole has a function. Atrial chamber and the ventricular chamber, all the chambers in the heart has a function. 50% of the function is done by the ventricle, 50% of the function is done by the heart, I mean the atrium. Atrial diastole, what happens? Ventricular systole pushes the blood into the arteries, but the venous side, it is only the atrial diastole which sucks the blood. So now, heart is a dual function, dual machine. So far it's a single machine, you all know that. Even the Jarvik's heart is failed. Prosthetic heart, why? Because they gave only 2 chambers. How can he work with the 2 chambers? It's like asking you to walk with 1 leg. But that's what they did because that's the thinking. So that has failed. Unless we give the total function of a prosthetic heart, it will never function. This is my, I have said this many times in the international conferences now. Hopefully this will come into light Next slide, please. Next slide. This is another discovery in the. We always think that only the blood flowing in the arteries are pulsatile, right? You can feel the pulse. The blood flowing in the vein is linear, we think, is not pulsatile. No, both arterial flow and venous flow is pulsatile. That is a new understanding of circulation. Only the difference is venous tree is collapsible tree. It runs in a negative pressure. So you cannot feel the pulse on the wall, but the flow is pulsatile because it is dictated by the atrial diastole. When it sucks the blood, the blood flows into the atria. When it goes into systole, naturally it lets down, the gravity pulls the blood back. When the gravity pulls the blood back, what happens? The venous valve holds it. So it's intermittent. It goes like this, see, slowly. So it's a pulsatile. Next slide, please. This is a new concept. I will bring it. We have to discard the understanding of blood pressure in the future, okay? This is a totally new concept because blood pressure is a very gross parameter to understand hemodynamics. This was...
I always say.
Oh, that's great for me, for you all to, you feel that way. That's a good thing. Because if I take blood pressure in 4 fingers, it's different in 4 fingers. Do you know that? Each finger will give different blood pressure. But what is important? The blood has to circulate. It has circulated in a particular speed in the whole body. That is more important. It has a velocity. Like your 98.4 degrees temperature holds the miliinterior. Same way, there is a particular velocity of the blood is the miliinterior. So I started studying the velocity of the blood. The blood pressure, why blood pressure came into existence? Because in 1720s there is a scientist in France by name Stephen Hales. He cut the carotid artery of a mare and suddenly saw the blood pumping up. So he put a tube with water, and the last tube, it was so high, the last tube actually put climbing the branch of a tree. It was 110 inches long, about 6 feet. So this was he established blood as a pressure. But this test cannot be used for another 200 years. Till genius of Mahmoud and Korkov came and they decided, wait a minute, why you have to put water in the tube? Let us put mercury in the tube. The moment they put the mercury, the 110 feet tube reduced to 10 feet, 10 inches. So they have a portable machine now. Instead of cutting, they put a pressure cuff. So now it became a practical sphygmomanometer, and today we can check blood pressure for everybody. After 1952, they converted blood pressure into a disease. Okay, that's another story. Till then it was not a disease because they found a medication which can take the blood pressure up and down. The moment they put millions of dollars to this medication. So they started using this medication. They can bring it up and down. Just like today we use statin because cholesterol, we can take it up and down in a moment. So this is the new concept will come up. The blood, next slide please. Next slide please. Don't worry about this graphs. I just give the concept. This is a concept for the new generation. The velocity of the blood is more important than the blood pressure.
I have been saying this, sir, always speed is important, but they're not getting it.
Sadhguru, when I explained to him about the atrial diastole, many people I have to explain whole time. I was incidentally I told him, Sadhguru, I found this. What is new about it, he said. This is what we thought in yogic science for a long time. I was so encouraged. That is, of course, yogic science is one thing that I cannot say. Yogic science says, I have to show, today's medicine is what? You have to show some experimental model and I have to prove it. Then I can show it. But when he said that, it was so encouraging to me that I'm in the right path. So, so now, the blood moves.
Because you mentioned this, sir, if I can take a minute and say this. Please sit down, please. See, there are various aspects of yoga where the ventricular pumping we want to slow down and enhance the atrium to function better. because these are considered to be purificatory. We are teaching them these things, they may not exactly know, but they can see this. If they just do that for a few minutes, suddenly the blood pressure in the traditional terms comes down. Always doctors tell me they want to check my blood pressure. I said, no. It's my blood pressure is my business, why you want to know my blood pressure? Just leave it alone. But they say, no, we must check your blood pressure. It is a completely… I don't know. So this is one aspect where about the cardiac function and yoga, we are always seeing how to slow down the ventricular pumping and enhance the articular thing, because we want the blood to be pure. Because rejuvenation in the body, the cellular regeneration happens better if the ventricular movement is less and articular movement is more. If that is balanced well, your cellular functions will be much better, you will stay young and you will stay active.
Absolutely, Sadhguru. In scientific terms, what should I say? What he said is ventricular function and atrial function should be balanced. But in circulation point of view, the blood has to move in a particular velocity from the artery and the veins. So in the veins, it moves at a particular velocity because of the atrial suctioning. On the artery, it moves by the ventricular pumping. So this velocity, maintenance of the velocity, is maintaining the milieu interior. That is more… always we thought, now we think that only the arterial circulation is important for nutrition and oxygenation. No. Venous circulation is as important for nutrition and oxygenation. It has to be in a combination. Otherwise, why the ulcer, venous ulcer should stay non-healing for 10–15 years? It doesn't heal because why? It doesn't get the oxygenation, because venous circulation is not good. Arterial, they have got nice blood pressure, nice arterial circulation. But still it doesn't heal. Why? Because venous circulation is as important as arterial circulation. But he puts in a different way, ventricular function, the atrial function must be in combination. See? There's yogic science. This is the science of circulation. So,
cellular regeneration and that balance or the timing of that balance are very vital in the yogic process. People who are just practicing at a certain level may not notice these things, but it's very much there, it's distinctly noticeable. And I would like to understand, what's the body temperature got to do with the pumping of the heart? Why is it when the temperatures are higher, it tends to pump more? What is…
The temperature of the body has something to do with the cardiac beat.
Why is that?
It becomes tachycardic when the temperature goes up, because naturally the blood vessels dilate. So the resistance, blood vessel resistance of
it's because of dilation?
Dilatation decreases the resistance.
It's because of arterial dilation this is happening,
Yeah.
is it? That's the only reason?
That may… most probably that's how I feel, because it doesn't affect on the venous wall of the vessel. The arterial blood vessels dilates, peripheral resistance decreases, so the cardiac output adjusts itself to the peripheral resistance.
Because these aspects are there in the yogic system. Please, sir, please.
Yeah.
But I have no explanation why in the practice of yoga, we are always conscious that the body temperature should not rise, because everything that we are doing has the possibility of rising body temperature. Not in terms of, with thermometer, but there's Ushna. So when that happens, your heartbeat goes up.
Yes.
Too much Ushna means your heartbeat goes up. But it should not go up. It should be just normal, or slightly above normal because you're physically active. But the moment you generate Ushna, it will go up. So this is why always the yogic practice is, at least in a tropical country, it is always before 8:30 in the morning and always after 4:30 in the evening. Never when the sun is up, because at that time, even if the temperatures are reasonably cool, your body tends to absorb that, because yogic practices and The five elements in nature are very, very directly connected. It's all outcome, all yogic practices are an outcome of what is called as Bhuta Shuddhi. One thing is to absorb the sun's energy. When the sun is up beyond 30 degrees, if he is up anywhere, you don't do yoga, any physical yoga. You sit and meditate, but you don't do yoga because you will absorb too much ushna and immediately your heartbeat will rise. I wanted to understand why it is rising. Is it only because of articular ventilation? It doesn't feel like that to me, but I don't know why it rises.
There may be I have not explored that, Sadhguru, till you raise that subject here. But right now, cardiac output is directly related to peripheral resistance of the blood vessels. That is there because there are medications to increase or decrease the peripheral resistance to control the blood
That is how
pressure.
it is doing in the medicine.
That's how we practice that. Not that everything we practice in medicine is absolutely right. We practice medicine on the basis of the knowledge what we have today. 1500 years back, if you had come, they practiced medicine on the basis of liver is the organ of circulation. That time also they treated the diseases.
That's what I asked you, sir, but you gave us the information, doctors not only made mistakes, they were also planning assassination.
I am a doctor, so I don't want to accept that we have made mistake, but we try to work out within the knowledge we have and we try our best to… We bring a change in the course of the disease anyhow, whatever the basic science is there. Now, ultimately now, I have to answer the first question, what is the cause of opening of those valves and closing those valve walls? Now, the experiment on the heart proved me that, now this is a new understanding of the muscular function of the muscular contraction, okay? That experiment proved cardiac muscle contracts and dilates, both are active. The Starling law doesn't hold good there. It has to be changed or discarded for the heart. He did that experiment, a famous experiment. If, some biologists are here, they have done this in the lab. They give an electric stimuli for frog's leg and take a curve. The moment you give an electric stimuli, it contracts and the curve goes up. So he said, muscle contracts. Going back is recoiling, that is a resting position. Actually going back is also active. So he said, what holds good for the leg holds good for the heart also. He did not do any experiment on the heart. He said holds good. It doesn't hold good for the heart. Heart muscle contracts during systole, dilates during, expands during diastole. I am telling right in front of esteemed gathering here, in front of Sadhguru. Now the whole world will know this. I can boldly tell that. Actually, I get the confidence because Aristotle says one thing. That is why I can talk about Aristotle's theory also. He said one thing, if the facts, you have new facts which contradicts with the old theories, this is teaching to student. If the facts you have gathered contradicts the old teaching, either that old teaching has to be modified, if necessary it should be discarded. So I get the right from him to present this, even contradicting his own understanding of the heart today. He gives me that authority.
When you have a 4-cylinder engine and you thought you have only 2 cylinders, how bad is that?
So now I am going to explain to you how the blood moves. This completes entire understanding of circulation, this work. First of all, it completes the understanding of heart function. All the 4 chambers of the heart functions and motion of blood in the venous system, how it comes back. So what happens, I'll show it in animation which is very clear to you all, how the atrial, when the standing up, atrial diastole sucks the blood, the vein valves open and the blood moves up. When it goes in systole, that force is lost and the gravitational force pulls the blood down and closes the venous valves. So now this completes. Now all these things you can see in the YouTube, it's on in my YouTube all over. Everybody has seen it. Or you can go to my… Yeah.
This is an animation explaining the experimental data. You are here visualizing the 4 chambers of the heart when the human being is in erect posture. You are also seeing the motion of blood in the arterial and venous tree. a EKG timing the opening and closing of the venous valves, which synchronizes with the diastole and systole of right atrium. Diastole of atrium creates a negative pressure and sucks the blood from the venous tree. The blood in inferior vena cava moves upwards towards the atrium, and this upward motion of blood opens the venous valves. During systole, atrial negative pressure is zero, and the gravitational pressure is higher, and it draws the blood downwards in the inferior vena cava. This backward motion of blood closes the venous valves. The upward and backward motion of blood opens and closes the venous valves during each cardiac cycle. In the erect posture, gravitational force is at its peak and the motion of venous valves at its highest, hence very obvious. This motion is present in all postures, but least obvious when the patient is lying down. Here you see the motion of the venous valves when the human being is lying down.
Next, this is the last conclusive slide. Next slide, please. This is a conclusion. What is the conclusion? Atrial diastole, an active phenomenon, henceforth, after these experiments, and functions like a suction machine of the human heart. It keeps the blood in motion in the system and systemic and pulmonary venous systems. Peripheral muscle contraction, and famously labeled as the peripheral heart of the human body, and respiration supplement as ejective forces. They are not the main forces. Second, venous flow of the blood is pulsatile as it relates to the atrial diastole. It is subtle and very well noted in the central veins surrounding the atrial chambers. That is a reference where it was published. Venous valves open and close during each cardiac cycle, and it is secondary to atrial diastole. Fourth, the function of the atrium is to keep the blood in motion in the venous system at an optimal velocity, not pressure, optimal velocity. And it is important to the maintenance of milieu interior of the body, like other parameters of the human body. The cardiac muscles, the last one, cardiac muscles contract and stretch. Both are active. Both are active phenomenon with the physical, chemical and electrical changes occurring in each state. So this is the final conclusion. This took me 35 years to understand and publish it, and now I am telling you in 10 minutes. And my pranams to Sadhguru.
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
If you want to…
Sadhguru has signed it, let me read it. To Sir Dinker Rai, much love, regard and blessings. Sadhguru, 23rd October 2022. It is a gift for my Diwali. This will be in the high pedestal in my home. It will be kept there. I have got other books also of Sadhguru's, all the books I have, almost everything. Karma he has converted into memory is a fantastic concept for all of us, fantastic for the present generation. He has modified that word he used, karma. Nobody knows what karma is. He made it in memory. Immediately everything is very clear for us.
So, inspired by Dr. Rai, if anybody wants to conduct an experiment, choose your own dog, not your neighbor's dog. Okay? Don't pick your neighbor's dog and do something.
Now you can do experiments various other ways too now, you know. You don't have to do that.
The family. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being here. It's our privilege that this fact, I hope the scientific community fully accepts this
Yes.
and in the work to bring health and well-being to people, such basic misunderstandings about how the body functions could be causing disasters that nobody can talk about.
We have opened a new door in all this time, entire world doing research on the ventricular function. I have opened a new door, that's all what I have done. The entire research will revolve around atrial function. New devices will come, new understanding of heart failure will come, new medication will come, new devices will come. The whole world will has an opportunity. That's all what I have done. I have done basic physiology.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Shakila, bala,
Please, ma,
bala,
ಅವ್ರು ಬೇಡವಾ ಅವರು
ಬರಬೇಕು, bala, Vanji. Because of
ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕನ್ನಡ ಬರುತ್ತಾ?
because of our help, I reached this state.
He never experimented on her.
35 years, 35 years I worked. She took care of the house and the children, so I have to thank her in your presence.
Thank you, sir.